Hello, everybody. Welcome to my favorite shitty movie. That's right, I'm back. Recently over in Belfast, also with today's a special guest, Joshua Rollins, who wrote the film we were producing called World Breaker. Look for it next year. It's a kind of a lo-fi sci-fi film with a perfect title for our times, I think, World Breaker. Good old Mila Jovovich, who knows how to kick some ass. I think Resident Evil proves that. And the great Luke Evans, and hopefully star of tomorrow, Billy Boulet, who plays the young girl in our film. I could not be more excited to have made this movie because Josh, just a full disclosure, has been so amazing as a partner, has bared with us for 7 years as we developed and had false starts and recasting and repackaging until we finally were able to make his film this year in Belfast. And I could not be happier. I think everyone here will like it. With a little luck, the film will never appear on this program because it's going to be awesome in the real way, not awesome in the way we like to celebrate some of our films here. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a Canadian sports film that came out in 2012 that somehow I missed, which makes sense because I'm not Canadian and I don't really watch sports, although I like sports films. So my bad. Josh brought this to my attention when we were on location. And when I said, would you please come on the show? He went through, and of course, like every good fan, he wanted to do Big Trouble in Little China. Sadly, we'd already done that. So Goon was his second thing. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And I'm excited to be back. And I want to have a huge shout out for my friends who kind of covered the show while I was away, starting with my amazing co-host, Todd Anderson, who was amazing, and it got Tess Rafferty, who created the show, back several times, Dana Guerin, who came on, the great Mark Hines, who came on. And so I just want to thank everybody for kind of keeping the show going while we were away, working up mischief in Belfast. With that, I want to bring up, tonight he's playing the role of Blanco Anderson, but you know him as Todd. Todd, bring yourself back into the program. Hello.
Hi, I'm so glad you're back. This is
my God, I'm so glad to be back.
It feels like home again.
It does.
For so long while you were gone, I was like, oh, this is the Wild West. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, you didn't get arrested. I'm a little disappointed, but you tried.
Well, I tried. It didn't work.
Well, we have a sponsorship situation now. I know.
Well, that was while you were gone, and now that's over. It's
you scared him off like that.
We don't need to mention them anymore. No, they said you can keep doing it if you want to, and I was like, no. If you pay me, I'll keep doing it. And they were like, well, we'll give you more free drinks. And I was like, that's not enough. I wasn't asking very much at all.
Well, we tried.
And we had a sponsor. We've proven that it can be delightful. If you want to pay us to do that. Yeah, it's simple.
It's good to know we can be bought. So tonight, I wanted to say I was pretty good while I was away, but we had that action figure problem of mine. Something came online and I had to do it. Lon Chaney's famous London After Midnight. This is the holy grail of lost silent films. Film doesn't exist, but you can see the sculpt is pretty
wow. Good. You got a lot of reflection on there.
Yeah, it sucks. See,
I can see him better when he's further back. Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's good.
But this is what he looks like, which is pretty cool. So if you are into collecting NECA action figures, these usually go on sale for $30, and in a year they're $150. You're welcome.
Yeah, just don't take them out of the thing.
Don't take them out of the thing.
Yeah, leave them in the thing.
To play with, and then one you keep.
Yeah. Do you ever get ones that you want to play with and you set them up?
Maybe.
Okay. It's fine. I'm not judging you. I'm just
put out the girls from Halloween last year, so they're all in their 70s outfits, and it's like PJ. It's like you got like Laurie Strode character has like the knitting needles in her bag, and it's detail. It's good detail.
Yeah, those are good detail.
Oh my god! So Todd, now you had seen and loved this film, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest. I did not see this in the theater. I wasn't aware of it when it was in the theater. I saw it on video, and I was like, "What's this?" And I'm a guy who likes Jay Baruchel. I enjoy him, so I was like, "What?" And I like Sean William Scott as well very much. So I was like, "Oh, this seems like I would laugh." And the R-rated comedies, I'm like, I try to see them in the theater.
Right.
Just R-rated horror movies. Anything is a genre of mine. I try to see it in the theater. So I missed this and I felt terrible. But when I saw it, I loved it so much. I mean, I just thought it was great.
Yeah.
And Hillary loved it. And I'm a big, like, Tracy, like you, I don't key into any sports.
Right.
Maybe the Irish national sport of hurling is interesting to me, but it's not easily accessible. But all the other sports, the American sports, I don't give a shit. But the movies I really like, especially sports comedies, I don't know why.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, to date, and I love Caddyshack. I love Slapshot. I love all these, The Longest Yard, all these things. This has been my favorite sports comedy since the first time I saw it, and I revisit it all the time. I think it's a really, really good movie. I think it's kind of pitch perfect. Why it bombed, I think that's a marketing thing, and it's a foreign film, I guess. So maybe they had trouble there, but I don't know. It's for me, it's a great movie. And I'm willing to hear arguments that I'm willing.
Well, it's funny because I saw on our fan page, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I love this movie," or "Oh my god, this sounds great. I missed it." So there was already a lot of engagement about it. Yeah, I'm with you.
But there were also some people who were like, "Yeah, but when I saw it, I was like, eh." And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't know why it like hit me as hard as it did, and it doesn't reach other people. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think what makes it stand out for me at least is that it's surprisingly sweet. There's a lot of heart underneath kind of the guy toxic crude stuff, and it's like they're aware of what they're doing. It's not like my favorite internet moment or meme of the time right now is so many men are perplexed because someone started this thing like, hey ladies, would you rather run into a random guy in the woods or a bear? And like 99 women are like, yeah, the bear, because like we're safer. And then all these men are getting angry, going, "You don't understand how bears could kill you." Like you're proving the point with the anger with which you are responding to a nothing burger meme because you don't listen. That's part of the issue. But like it was so funny because I'm like, there's no sweetness. But with this movie, I feel like there is a lot of heart and sweetness. So I definitely.
It's really funny you saying that. It's just the way the movie juxtaposes its violence and like it's hard violence.
Yeah.
But like makes the violence sweet is actually kind of amazing.
But I also
like the Liev Schreiber thing. Yeah.
Also, this film is old enough that Liev Schreiber wasn't thinking he was too big for his britches to be in it in a small role. Like I feel like he thinks he's serious, like he's become Ray Donovan, and you're like, I don't know. But like in here, I'm like, you're playing second fiddle to the guy from American Pie.
Well, I mean, this did come out during the run of Ray Donovan, didn't it?
I don't know. Was it all that long ago? Like 2012? I guess maybe it's been.
I don't know. I was on an episode of Ray Donovan, and John slapped me in the face.
Wow, Republicans do that. I've heard. Amazing. I want to bring up our guest. As mentioned, Josh and I are both recently back. I can do a couple promo shots that tell you nothing about the movie. This is us on location. Check out that production value for an independent film. Come on, yo. Maybe that's a cabin behind us. Maybe we're on the Northern Irish coast here, freezing our asses off. Most importantly, Josh probably was single-handedly responsible for making sure I didn't fall and die and kind of do a Little House on the Prairie, the credit sequence where the girl comes tumbling down the hill. That could have been me without Josh. So I want to thank him for that. Josh started off actually like yourself as an actor.
What? Was he in stuff?
He was in stuff. Not only did he was part of the Blue Man Group on Broadway. So sit
down.
What? He was a Blue Man Group. He's also
when did he do the Blue Man Group? What?
We'll bring him on. He'll tell you.
What time period? Might have seen him.
You probably did. And then he also Chicago playwright, started putting some of his work up. and transitioned from acting to writing. But he also, along the way, was in The Dark Knight. He was the head sniper, I believe, in the first two Dark Knights. He's also worked opposite, small people like Diane Lane. He's had scenes with Gary Oldman. He's done all kinds of really fun movies that probably could also be on our show. That maybe he'll come back if we don't torture him too much and talk about them specifically. But then he's also an amazing writer, as I mentioned. He did a really cool film starring Naomi Watts called Infinite Storm, which again, pandemic, so you guys might have missed it, but you can rent it. And then World Breakers, his second film that he's written that is up. He has a top secret Amblin television project. He also has a spec script. That's right, an original thing that was bought. Check him out. For Atomic Monster, that would be James Wan's company for you and me. He's a badass. He's a fanboy. He understands that Aliens is eminently quotable and cool. His name is Joshua Rollins. Welcome to the program, Josh. Come on up.
Hey, thank you guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Very exciting.
Oh my gosh. So Josh, how are you doing? How are you acclimating to, less Guinness?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back. It's definitely not as rainy as it was in Belfast. I mean, I think we both saw on the 7 different BBCs that they have in Ireland that it was the rainiest April/May in the history of Europe and Ireland in particular. So
I think it was kind of the rainiest season in Los Angeles in a long time as well. So I'm just saying you didn't miss anything.
okay.
Well, also Los Angeles, I saw this terrifying statistic. We had more rain in Los Angeles this year so far than Seattle. So we know that the world's truly broken. That should never be the case. It was a great time, but I am glad to be back, and we're deep into post on the movie. But I am excited to talk about this film.
Yeah.
As we ask everybody who joins the show, Josh, for you, tell us what makes a great shitty movie for you. And by way of that answer, again, because we couldn't do Big Trouble, how you arrived at Goon.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you first asked me to come on this program, I immediately, my thought was Big Trouble in Little China, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And then I had to look through the list of stuff that had been done to make sure I wasn't picking anything. And the thing that I noticed was that there weren't any sports movies in your history, which was
There's
good.
a couple. Golf mostly. We did Caddyshack and The Legend of Bagger Vance. So
is that what that was?
I don't consider golf a sport. No, I'm kidding.
That's fair.
By the way, I don't consider Legend of Bagger Vance a film, so we could go do this all day.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe he's right. Okay, so we've never done a sports film.
So I grew up in a really small town in West Virginia, and we had very limited access to we didn't have a movie theater. I think our closest movie theater was like an hour away. So it was really this one local video store where we all went to get stuff. And every time I had a sleepover at a friend's house, they were like, "Hey, let's watch a movie." And I'm like, "Yeah." And it always would be Any Given Sunday. And I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm going to blow my fucking brains out." So for me, a shitty movie was a sports movie because I felt like every sports movie I saw, which I had to see over and over again because all my friends, that's all they wanted to watch. It was always the same deal. And for me, what makes a shitty movie is predictability. And all these movies are so predictable. If I know who the villain is by page 5, I'm out. I'm out. And so for me, that was really why I was like, hey, let's do a shitty movie. Let's do a sports movie that takes every convention of a sports movie and subverts it. And that's really what I wanted to do with Goon. So
I love that. We were saying a little bit before the show went on the top of the show. I was struck by how sweet this film is. Like there's, I think we screw up guys in a lot of ways in our culture. I think you guys are grown up to hit each other to try to figure out something or feel something. But I feel like this film there's a sweet quotient that it didn't have to do. Even the way they handle like the gay brother or I'm not very smart or even the gal, who's like, look, I'm kind of a slut. I like to sleep with guys. Like this guy. I'm like, I even like Alison Pill. Like
the sex positivity involved in Goon
fabulous.
is so deeply Canadian.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
It's,
100%
oh,
behind.
them fighting words, Philip. Youngblood is a much better shitty hockey movie. Well, okay. Again,
Youngblood's very good, and Slapshot is very good. There's a lot of really good, and Miracle, like to go
I
beyond
love Miracle.
with the comedy ones. Miracle's amazing.
Because
There's so many great sports movies. I'm a huge sports movie guy.
same way. I don't
Yeah,
like sports, but I love sports films. I think they're
yeah,
another.
I'm the same way.
I detest boxing. Some of my favorite films are boxing movies. It's
Yeah,
completely.
Rocky and Creed, like together, are amazing sports franchise movie.
They really are. But I even something like, I mean, Clifford Odets, like, it's like Golden Boy. Even that breaks my heart. Like anything from that to like Raging Bull, I'm there, but I cannot watch a real boxing match to save my life.
No.
And hockey for me too. I've been to one hockey game. So I'm good. No interest, but I really liked this film. I actually loved Youngblood. I think every teen girl loved Youngblood back in the day. But Rob Lowe was so pretty and did not a lot of hockey players I've seen. But that's okay. He didn't look like a press secretary either, and he was around. But so Josh, talk to us a little bit about, when did you first see this movie? Was it video or did you see it in the theater?
No, I missed it in the theater as well. I think everyone pretty much. I think it probably made $7 in the movie theater. But yeah, I missed it, and then and yeah, for me, I played street hockey growing up, and I always loved. When I moved to Boston, I was a huge Bruins fan, and this is when the Bruins sucked. So I would go watch hockey, and I loved the brutality of it. I loved I love the fact that they encouraged fighting. I thought that was cool. It's a little like race, like NASCAR. People who like NASCAR, they don't like NASCAR. They like when the cars crash, And I feel like
I would go to Bruins games as a kid too, because my friends' parents had season tickets, and when they didn't go, he would take me. And the brutality of it was awesome. Like there's a shot in Goon where you see, the blood streaked across the plexiglass.
yeah.
I literally
a little girl.
Absolutely. And I literally saw that myself, as a teenager. And at the same time that was happening, there were multiple fights in the stands because this is Boston and there's a lot of aggression.
A lot.
So there were people beating the shit out of each other in the stands. It wasn't just on the rink. It was a very a violent sports arena. The Boston Garden.
And I think what I really love about this movie is it takes perhaps one of the most masculine of masculine sports. So it's not only about hockey, it's about an enforcer for the hockey. It's about a guy whose his only job is to beat the shit out of another person. And it takes all these sort of traits of toxic masculinity and it subverts every single one of them. And not only that, but what I also love about it with the character of Liev Schreiber plays Ross. It both celebrates the sport of hockey and it indicts professional sports for paying these grown men and women to ruin their bodies. And then once their bodies are completely ruined, it chucks them on the scrap heap. And you see that multiple times with Ross saying like, all they want to do is see us bleed. That's all they care about. That's all they want. And I love the fact that, and I love the fact too, that Sean William Scott plays this enforcer who his God-given talent. Jay Baruchel says at one point, "You were doing what you were born to do. Your fist is the size of my Uncle Morty's prostate." It's such a great line. Like he's looking for his purpose. And he says multiple times, look, my dad's a doctor, my brother's like gay. They've both found their reasons to live. And I don't have a thing. And his thing is that he's really, really good at beating the shit out of people. But he's the sweetest person in the film.
Yeah, I know.
The most sensitive person in the film. He says please and thank you before every fight. He wishes good luck to people when they're fighting. He is, and even, you mentioned Allison Pill and sort of this sex scene that they have. They sleep in a bed together and hold hands all night. Yeah. It is the most pure and chaste sex scene you've ever seen.
The way he sees her, the way they frame him, it's almost the way you typically frame an ingenue, where he's in the bar and it's like, this is Meg Ryan waiting for Tom Hanks to show up, except it's this, right? And then and then here she comes, like oh, while you were sleeping, it's my haircut, and that I'm in the glow, and it's this like there's such a sweetness to their relationship, and what I thought was remarkable about this, again, it is what it is. It's a guy sports movie. However, she doesn't have that much screen time, but she's really you get a sense of who she is. She's well written. You've got a top-notch actress, playing this, and she just registers. And I think some movies like this that don't quite kind of get to this level, they don't know how to write for women at all, nor do they try.
Yeah.
And there's not a sweetness, there's a crassness. And I think there's something about, like, I think even what Apatow achieved in The 40-Year-Old Virgin is a sweet film. I'm not so crazy about some of the other Apatow films, but that movie, he gets that kind of calibration right. And I thought this one just had it riddled with, like, if you don't like Sean William Scott, I don't know what's wrong with you. He's
So let me ask you guys a question. Who do you think the villain is in this movie?
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. I mean, I mean,
I think it's the fans. It's the us. It's the like he's playing for
I mean,
and the sport itself.
that's a deep look at it. I mean, then Jay Baruchel's the villain. What you're saying, I'm not sure that's not right. I mean, I think that's maybe very right. For me, in first viewing, it's the star hockey player who doesn't want to admit him into his life. A great character.
So here's what I think is fascinating about that character too, is that Xavier Laflamme, right, who's this golden boy, the most talented hockey player anyone's ever seen, who gets laid out by Ross the boss before the movie even starts, and now is a shadow of his former self. He can't skate without worrying that someone's going to hit him. He's doing coke. He's sleeping with prostitutes. He's basically doing
You can't do those things. It's wrong.
But he's basically doing everything that in any other sports movie, he would be the hero. He's the golden boy. He's the golden boy who's living the rock star life and who finally comes to realize that hockey and his love of hockey is the thing that will save him. In this movie, he's the villain. He's the bad guy. I feel like in every sort of instance, when Sean William Scott's character Doug, the thug Glatt, when there's a moment very early on when Xavier stands up and spits on the logo.
Yeah.
And Sean William Scott gets down on his knees and wipes the spit off. He's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Yeah. And the surrounding cast.
Yeah.
I just love all these guys. Yeah, I mean, the coach is Kim Coates.
Kim Coates. I mean, the Canadian of this movie is very strong.
And the quotability is just off the charts. God, yeah. I mean, the goalie, Belcher, 2 questions or two rules. 1, don't touch my fucking Percocets. And 2, do you have any fucking Percocets?
Do you know, like, that actor is in one of my favorite all-time horror movies.
Which one?
Do you know what it is? I just guess.
I don't.
It's Final Destination 2.
Oh, Final Destination. You know how I feel about Final Destination.
Yeah, but he gets cut in half by barbed wire that's flying through the air. He falls into 3 parts. But his character also says before he dies, because he knows he's going to die, because that's how Final Destination works, he goes, says to his friend, hey, just can you go to my apartment if I die? Just go there before my mom can get there and get all my porn out. Because I don't want her to know about my porn.
He's fantastic in this movie. And even, the other characters like Gordy, Gordy, the old sort of chiseled veteran who's going through a horrible, horrible divorce. And the very first thing he says is, my wife wanted all my money and I said, you can only have half and blah, 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 blah. The very next scene, it's him crying and saying that he's the reason that the marriage fell apart. Right. And he's the one who fucked up. And he spends the whole movie pining after his ex-wife, which is such a, you meet all these characters and they're so filled with bravado and toxic masculinity. And then they come into contact with Doug and they immediately drop all artifice and become their true selves. Not to mention that Gordy is in a kind of a love relationship with Stevie, who is clearly closeted gay and clearly deeply in love with Gordy and just wants the two of them to be together. And is also the nicest guy in the film other than Doug. It's just a really great sort of supporting cast.
It's almost with Jay Baruchel's projects, when you think about it, this is a kind of a through line for all of them, reversing toxic masculinity, or at least lampooning it. I mean,
also,
this is the end and all that stuff.
I kind of love this too, where it's like, let's meet the family, you know, at Temple, and you know, Sean William Scott is like crushing this girl's hand because he's so awkward, because he's such a bruiser, you know. And you look at Eugene Levy, who plays his dad, and of course, this older gentleman is like, you know, her father, and he's waiting for, you know, this other son, you know, who's kind of the more straight-laced guy, who of course everyone doesn't seem to get, you know, until he shows up with his boyfriend that he's gay. You know, but this reoccurring thing of like, you know, we're Jewish, I'm smart, I'm not so smart, but like you're gay, but you have something, and there's this inherent sweetness. And I have to say, against the tapestry of the darkness of our world right now, I really felt like it was very sweet to see like this Jewish protagonist beat the shit out of all these toxic asses, and it just felt a little bit better to watch this week perhaps than it would have in another year for me. But it was so lovely. And I was saying to Josh, you know, when we were texting earlier, you know, I was probably a couple years too old for American Pie and all of that. Like, I got it, that everyone has to have their risky business kind of teen film of that era. Mm-hmm. But he really was so good in that role that maybe that is why he was pigeonholed. But when you see him in this, and he's actually quite a good looking guy. I was looking him up, and he's got like the wavy hair now. I mean, I feel like he's right for like some auteur to put him in a Sundance film and remind people he's not, what was it, Stifler? Or, you know, from that, and that he really has dimension and nuance, and he's a good romantic lead. But I like what you're saying though, Josh, because I think his character is, everyone he touches is nicer for it. And even the would-be rock star, you know, who was a pain in the ass and not playing for the team, by the end gets the Stones to come back and really play and win for the team. And
he's the redemption character in the movie.
Yeah, like I feel like it's a good thing. And I think even the sweetness, like you were saying, you know, the guy who's like, you know, like, I'm losing my wife, I didn't spend enough time with my kids, but I found my family in this team. I think that kind of male bonding, it's a sweet thing in a movie where
he redeems all the other characters except for Kim Coates.
It's true.
But at least you can tell Kim Coates' character is touched by him, but he's way too jaded to fucking go along with this.
Good call, Jeff. Yeah, he's good. I mean, I think we need to re-examine him. I have a friend who was friends with Marty McSorley, legendary tough guy Goon. He said, is the absolute sweetest guy model says, and many of those guys have serious problems later in life, either with suicide, CTE, or both. Yes. Yeah. In fact, I think when this film came out, I think it made $7 million on a $12 million budget at the box office. But apparently there were 3 enforcer characters like the Scott character who in real life had passed away and died because of their injuries. And that was kind of a fresh wound out there. And so a lot of people took aim at this movie as if it was making light of that, which obviously this had been made before those folks passed. But the violence of the sport is what it is, you know.
Well, also, I mean, not to sort of go into the sequel, but, you know, it was so popular on Netflix and on all these streaming services that they greenlit a sequel, which is kind of amazing.
Which is rare.
The sequel, it deals heavily with the fact that Liev Schreiber is now essentially just doing fight matches and living out his life, trying to earn enough bus fare to make it home at night. And Sean, you know, Doug the Thug Glatt, who's our hero, sort of gets implanted by the next young up-and-coming enforcer and gets sort of put out on his ass and then has to figure out
he gets replaced by a Nepo baby, which is
100%.
All of us get replaced by a Nepo baby. That's what happened.
Wyatt Russell as the ultimate Nepo baby.
Oh my God, I know, but I thought
I really like Wyatt Russell. I like him. I enjoy Wyatt Russell, and it aggravates me that I do, but fuck, some Nepo babies are okay, I guess.
He's great. Jamie Lee Curtis is great too.
Yeah, sure.
I just love.
Nobody thinks about that. It's
not to get into sort of the Nepo baby thing, but I just always love the people who are like, my parents did nothing for me. My parents. Gwyneth. shut the fuck.
Yeah. Gwyneth needs to sit down. Or
Darn
Zoe Deschanel. No one hires me because my dad's the famous DP, and I'm like, oh really? Okay.
I grew up on a farm in West Virginia. You want to talk about someone as far removed from Hollywood as it gets? I am the utter opposite of a nepo baby. So
Yeah.
I love when nepo babies do say, it's not like it's not hard work.
Yeah.
exactly.
Of course it's hard work,
Of
but
course it is.
you got it because there's all this hard work that goes into getting it.
Yeah.
And that's what nepo babies don't realize.
There's something about the honesty thing too. I really loved, Sean Williams, like Doug says in one scene, his parents, he sits down to have dinner with his parents after helping to win the game. And he thinks they're going to be so proud of him. And they're not. They're saying, this isn't a career. You can't keep doing this. You're hurting yourself. And he's like, no, I found what I'm good at. And he's like, look, I'm stupid. My brother's gay. Like, it's okay to call us what we are. I'm stupid. He's gay. I'm stupid. He's gay. I'm stupid. And they're like, stop saying that. Stop saying that. And he's like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I'm stupid. I'm not smart. And so this is the only thing I'm good at. And you guys are telling me I can't do it.
Yeah.
There's just something about his honesty that I love.
And there's something so sweet about the scene where, he kind of like they make out in the car, he and Allison Pill, and then, he gives his phone number and he calls her and he doesn't really know how to talk to her, but it's kind of a sweet, innocent thing. She agrees to meet him for coffee, thinking it's innocuous because, of course she has to drop the bomb that she has a boyfriend. And when he shows up to this scene, he's like, flowers, chocolate, and here's the official mascot for the team I play on. I'm like, melting. I'm like,
it's so sweet. It's the sweetest.
And when she says I have a boyfriend, he says, okay, that's fine. You can keep the mascot. It's official. It's official. I mean, there's no like, are you kidding me? Are you, he's like, oh, here's candy. You should eat the candy. I bought it. Like it's totally fine. Yeah. There's also people were talking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Let's say watch a hockey TV Shorzy, super smart social commentary. It does a lot of toxic masculinity in his head and hockey in general. Thank you, Jeff Luce. All right.
Shorzy's great. Yeah.
So cool.
I feel like Shorzy's in that sort of wheelhouse of this as well. I agree with that. Yeah.
I think this is the part where though, and again, we could go into a whole woke conversation, but because everyone's triggered by everything. But I think the way to
that triggered me.
I'm triggered. No, I just love it's like everyone's jumping on Seinfeld, and I'm like, this guy famously made a show about nothing and dated a high school girl in his 40s. Like, I don't ever look to him to tell me anything, right?
This is what I always say. Dudes who date high school girls always eventually get to this anti-PC, it's ruined comedy. They all get there.
Right.
If they're jacking off in front of their fucking coworkers or their fucking high school girls, eventually they're like, cancel culture is murdering comedy. No, it's just murdering you because you're a sex offender.
Because you're an ass. But here's the way to do it, though, is have heart. Be sweet. Men, there is a sweetness, and not run away from that. Like, I always love when all these big macho guys are like, what's your favorite movie? They're like, Shawshank Redemption. I'm like, yes, that is a love story. Any way you cut it, it's a love story. It's not a gay thing. It's a love story. And I think more films with a comedy subject, you can be as crass as you want, but if you love these guys, if they're lovable lunks, you can get away with it. And I think that would not harm us to go back to that. Get away. You could do a hard R comedy if there's some heart. And I think that's how Apatow made a mint starting off, and I think going back to that, and this film is just riddled with it. I think it's cool. And it's also talking about men aging, it's like, when you see these stories, it's the next great enforcer. And actually what's fun about this sequence is that this fight doesn't happen until the scene after that he's reading about it. That's his little thing. But then he sees this, why Ross Raya has to fight Doug Lapp before he retires. What I appreciate about this is like it sets up very quickly, just with one reaction shot, with the Liev Schreiber character, where he's like, okay, I know what I have to do now. And it's almost, I don't know if this is the boy version of All About Eve, but the youngin is threatening to place the old one. Yeah. And what are they going to do? So this whole thing is about mano a mano between the older guy who's on his way out and the younger guy who wants to be in. And what I also thought, again, as someone who doesn't care about sports at all, that this film it seemed to me, completely does not care about finals, playoffs. It's not the hockeys, it's the minors. It's like
No.
Bull Durham. It's a minor baseball game. This is minor hockey. It's not like the stakes aren't big. It's not even the championship. It's the runner-up too. They don't really track it. You don't know where they are. They have
But it makes the stakes feel big for the characters.
It's exactly right, and that's why it works. You care
Yeah.
for the characters. You don't care how the teams they're doing better and they get to win, but it's not the point that you would usually see in a sports film. And I think that works. They err on the side of character and not plot in that.
Yeah.
And Liev's not the villain. I mean, so the end showdown is not him. He doesn't hurt, Xavier Laflamme or Gordy or Stevie or any. He doesn't like maim them, and then Doug has to come out back on the ice for one last thing. It's both of them in the penalty box, and he looks to Doug and he says, "Hey kid, you ready?" And Doug says, "Yes, sir. Thank you for asking." And then they get out and they do what everyone paid to see, right?
And there's even a moment where you think he's going to fight, and he fakes Sean William Scott out, so he gets a penalty without having to throw a punch. He's not. To your point, he's not trying to hurt him. He's like, I outsmarted you. I've done this longer. You aren't that smart. But then at the end of the day, and I think it was a really interesting choice. First of all, I just love this. I had to get a still. It's like, yeah, that's right. Friends over. Love seeing that. But what I also really loved is that when he does get flattened, and they do have this kind of mano a mano, which has been kind of leading up to it. And boy, this shot, I took it earlier because the crunch on this was, the sound effect on that. I remember watching, it was the Dallas Cowboys versus the Redskins, and it was when Joe Theismann was their quarterback, and when his leg went like this,
oh fuck yeah!
As a child seeing that live, I saw this break in here, and I was like, okay, that was like a Theismann break that just triggered. But like,
by the way, Steven Seagal took that bone break and made an entire career out of it.
Is that what we're
doing it himself, just breaking that leg.
Oh my god, that guy, he's like the best bets in Scientology, right? It's like Mike Ovitz is like, I could turn anyone into a star. This guy's teaching me karate. I'll make him a picture deal, and then it works.
God bless. God bless. What a great thing for Russia.
But again, I think the thing that I love about this movie too is if you ask the normal, like some of the guys I went to high school with, right? If you ask them if they like this movie, they would talk about the brutality. They would talk about the blood. They would talk about how these guys were so tough. And yet on second viewing, on third viewing, you realize this is one of the sweetest movies that you will ever see.
Yeah,
and it's about men being compassionate and loving and open and emotional. Goon 2 has one of my favorite moments. So not to spoil anything, but in Goon 2, Sean William Scott is one of the co-captains in the beginning of the movie. And he stands up to give a speech to his team. And he's, as he said multiple times, he's stupid. He's not very smart. And so he stands up and starts reading this letter about a dream he had where he was the captain of a ship of monkeys and about how it relates to him being the captain. And at the end, he actually says, sincerely, Doug Glatt, during the speech, because he thinks that's how you're supposed to end a letter. And then the coach is like, great, Doug. I don't know what the fuck that was. But anyway,
Tim Coates is great. He says, that was great. That was great. And then he just moves on. It's so funny. Totally. Kim Coates is MVP of both of these movies, I would say.
He's fantastic.
He's so good.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was also really sweet, again, just the economy of scenes to set up some of these supporting characters, which I think also gets lost. Like, I actually, even that they gave lip service to Allison Pill's boyfriend, who doesn't really get a line of dialogue, but you get a sense of who he is. And even he has agency when he's noticing her reaction.
Yeah.
Not being pummeled. Like, he's not played for laughs. He's not played for, I mean, one of my big, and I love, R.I.P. Nora Ephron, but I remember even watching, I think You've Got Mail. where it's like Meg's trying to deal with Bill Pullman, right? When she really wants to be with and it's like Bill Pullman spends the whole movie with like allergies and he's sneezing. I'm like, I get it, he's a drip. Like Nora writes, she makes him a caricature. Whereas this guy has no dialogue. I'm like, oh, he's sweet, but she's not supposed to be with him either. And that because you have this tone that's a little crass, when she turns around and she's like, you make me not want to like sleep with all these other guys. Like, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And you're like, I love this couple's great. They're going to
So
work.
beautiful. Yeah.
That's like, oh my God, you've set it up. You've paid it off. It is what it is. But I think that kind of writing, especially by two men, it's just really lovely to see. I was shocked at how much I was like, oh, and also one of my, the laugh out line for me, when she breaks up with her boyfriend, she comes running into him to say, I've broken up with my boyfriend. And she's like, just to destroy. He's like, oh, did you just watch Rudy? Yeah, because like that's where he's coming from. I feel like a different generation, it would have been like Brian's song, but otherwise it's Rudy, right? For you boys. It's like if you're not crying, then you're just not a dude.
You reminded me of something about this movie that I noticed in watching it now. We were talking about, political correctness before. So Jay Baruchel's character makes a lot of homosexual panic sort of jokes with his friend, played by Sean William Scott. So, and that is taken to new levels in the sequel. I don't find it offensive, but I'm not gay. So maybe it's just for me. And it's also set in Massachusetts, where I grew up. So for me, this is a quintessential Massachusetts character. He's not, a violently homophobic, and he's probably got homosexual tendencies, and he exercises those things through homosexual panic jokes, which he does a lot of. In this movie. And I was like, when I was watching, I was like, so is this offensive? Is this not okay? I still think it's okay, because of it's a character, and it totally makes sense that this dude from Massachusetts would be this way.
Yes. But that's again, this is the part where if he sounded like some gal who went to Bryn Mawr, it would be a problem, right? And so it's like these guys are real. It's like when I watch Good Will Hunting, Ben Affleck is writing what he grew up with. That's absolutely how those guys sound. So I think, again, we used to be able to have context. And again, because there's a sweetness throughout the whole thing, there is not a moment where you don't understand he loves his friend. And that he creates an opportunity for his friend by putting him on his kind of little show. And, against all the odds,
his homosexual panic is genuine. Like, if he, like, what he's saying is, if he was gay, he would like to do the things he's saying, but he's not.
I think it's also, that's why I love sports movies, because I think there's always something homoerotic to it. It's like, I think Predator is the gayest film ever. Like, all those guys should just sleep with each other and get it over with. Like, there's like when Carl Weathers and like, Arnold, like, and they're like on the shot of the arm. I'm like, this is the gayest film I've ever seen. Oh, God, there's Jesse Ventura, the wrestler. I mean, it just keeps getting better when you watch that film, But I do feel like there's a love there, but that's how we talked. I mean, we're Gen Xers. I mean, it was a phrase, right? Oh, you're so gay, you're so this. We might not say that today, but this generation would have said that. And again, if we can't watch a comedy in the context of the year it came out, it's like people who want it, like, I think we need to ban Gone with the Wind, you guys. I don't like the portrayal of the maid. I'm like, okay, well, take that up with Margaret Mitchell. This was filmed in 1939. And if you want to erase the first woman to ever win an Oscar, okay, who happened to be Black, that's your choice. But I think you should be able to contextualize a film set in the Civil War might deal with slavery. So like, it's okay to like just not cancel it, but like, let's be a little thoughtful. And certainly on a sports comedy, I think this isn't the one that you sharpen your knives for.
No,
not a mean-spirited film, and it's intent.
Yeah, I mean, I will say too. Yes, I mean, I think he's incredibly. I will say he's derogatory towards everyone, not just homosexuals. I mean, he has that whole monologue where he talks about how his he's going to come up and see Doug when he's up, training, because his sister his cousin is an erotic dancer who has this really special trick that he needs to go see, and they're just cousins, so it shouldn't count. And I mean, it's
and Scott's like, no, that's something worse, dude. Like even the
but if you look at his reaction when that opening hockey game where they're sitting there and he taunts the guy and goes a little too far. And the guy says, I'm going to come get you, and he uses a derogatory term.
Right.
Yeah.
And Doug's immediate reaction is, hey, my brother's gay. And then, to me, the best line ever in a fight scene is, my brother's gay. And just obliterates the guy.
Totally.
And see Jay Baruchel's character, he idolizes Doug. Like, he wants to be Doug. Doug is his hero.
There's a little Sal Mineo James Dean thing going on with these two.
Oh, sure,
100%.
But there's also a sophomoric reality, right? When he's like, dude, welcome to the team. You could join the team. And then, they're like, dude, pick 69, dude. It's like,
because it's hilarious.
That's one of my favorite scenes. I mean, also just the fact that he beats the shit out of all of his teammates. And also, he has no good comeback. The guy says, this isn't the Mousecapades, buddy. And he goes, you're not auditioning. No. And he just beats the shit out of all of them. He's not good at the retort. He's not good at the comeback.
Hilarious.
He's only good at violence.
But even this is like a great introduction. But even this sophomore kind of thing, by the end, he's like, the only reason I'm not hurting you is you're on my team. Like, he learns. Like, there's actually, dare I say, a learning arc for our not smart character where he's like, hey, man, like, you're being a jerk to me right now, but I'm not going to hurt you because, and that, again, buys you so much goodwill for anything that's going to follow.
It's the learning moment when the coach makes him go sit in the back of the bus. So there's the piss hole in the back of the bus where everyone sort of pees. And Doug watches LaFlemme get hurt and loses himself for the first time and loses himself to the violence. And so we see the one moment where he's not well-intentioned and where he's not just protecting people, but when he actively seeks to hurt someone. And when he does, his team gets penalized, they lose the game, and he has to go sit back by the piss hole for the ride home. So there's an immediate punishment, which I love.
And he's childlike, and that is like something that you should have picked up as a small boy. But he's also introduced kind of, being a bouncer and divey bars. The old people, he's like, hey.
But he's so sweet as a bouncer. He like doesn't want. He's like, okay, punches you in the face. He's like, he's Dalton in Roadhouse times like 40.
Yeah.
He's
like Dalton by way of Forrest Gump. I mean, he's it's like Jenny, Ava. I mean, it's like, by the way, Jenny is the villain of Forrest Gump. That would be my official answer. But
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not too long after he gets shamed on the bus that he winds up in a diner with Liev Schreiber's character. Is that not too long after that?
Yes.
Because we have a clip of that scene.
This is the scene where they basically they do the setup with the best facial hair, like truly.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. I have a clip. It's not the entire scene. That scene is 2.5 minutes long, which is really long. But we have a snippet of it if you'd like to see it.
Let's roll film.
They just want you to bleed, right?
I'm here to do whatever they need me to do. If they need me to bleed, then I'll bleed for my team.
Yeah. Suppose you heard I'm gonna retire at the end of the season. I've been at this since I was 17. I'll be damned if I'm gonna go out like some Nancy boy middle-aged fuck. You understand?
Yeah, I understand.
You have my respect. Whatever that means to you, you got it. But know this shit hard. If ever it comes down to the morrow and it's you and me, kid, I will lay you the fuck out.
There it is.
That's exactly how it goes.
What's happening with it?
She used her own hair and taped it over her mouth.
I mean, some people would say this diner scene is way better than the Pacino De Niro diner scene. And I would agree with those people. I think it is. I think it is way more succinct. I think it says more in fewer words.
100%.
I mean, and it doesn't have, Pacino. I gotta be sharp. I gotta be on it.
And
But
De Niro, I've
there's
got
a-
to be
in
very
some
soft.
ways, that scene is this scene because doesn't Pacino say to De Niro says to Pacino, if it comes down to me and you,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
on you. It's the
Yeah.
same exact. Yeah. So basically, they shamelessly ripped off Heat, but made it way better. I think.
Wow.
I
bet
agree.
that's
I
really
actually-
another
I think
report.
that's
Well done,
good.
Josh. Yes.
I imagine that's what Jay Baruchel was doing.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh
Yes.
my
Because
god.
he's a movie-centric guy. Yeah.
It's so good. What I have to say, what other sports films can you guys think of that are kind of approximate to this in terms of the sweetness factor, but also the effective sports movie? Because usually it's one or the other. I think it's a really
Yeah.
hard mix. It's like trying to do a horror comedy hybrid. You
Yeah.
have to hit it just right, or it's
But again, this movie, the thing that I think this movie straddles that no other movie that I've seen has been able to do is to both celebrate and indict the industrial
Mhm.
sports complex. So I think you've got something like Concussion with Will Smith, which only indicts, right? And then
Right.
you've got something like Any Given Sunday, which only celebrates and doesn't show any of the negative reactions. And so you don't really see one that does both, which is I mean, and I may be wrong in that. I mean, clearly,
Well,
I
like if I'm gonna marry a sports movie with sweetness, I'm sorry, but A League of Their Own is
Yeah.
fucking super sweet. The Rookie, the Disney movie, The Rookie with Dennis Quaid is fuck. I mean, if that movie doesn't make you cry, you are dead inside. You have no soul. I think there's a bunch of sports movies that do this, but I think what Josh is saying is in the sports comedy realm. I'm not sure that there's one sweeter than this,
yeah.
and I do think they exist, like sweet. Blades of Glory oddly is very sweet.
Yes, it is.
But like on a sillier level, Goon I think earns it through great writing, great performances, great direction.
And I think Jeff brings up a good point. I mean, Rocky and Rocky 2 are really special because I think, like this film, they work because it's the character driven. It's the relationship between Apollo, well, especially in part 2, between Apollo and Rocky. And it's so interesting because people somehow this is up, the Mandela effect is, you think you remember something that's not actually true. I think so many people forget that Rocky loses in the first film, but he wins by losing. It's a lesson that perhaps we should reinvestigate today with the teacup children generation. But like, it's the idea that, but I got in the game. I was the man in the arena. I did it. I was hitting meat in a meat packing district. I could walk those stairs and I demanded attention. And that's a win. And that's more real. And then in part 2, it's like, okay, now we're a sequel, now we're a franchise. But that film gets away with it because I'm sorry. I remember being a little girl crying that gorgeous scene of like Carl and Sly, and they're sleek, gorgeous men on that beach running to that score. I'm like, oh, I mean,
that's Rocky 3 though, right?
No, 2. Right. Well, yeah, 3 too. 3 as well. Yeah, that's right. With Clever.
No, I mean the scene you're talking about is Rocky 3.
That's Rocky
I just
3.
remember seeing that going, oh my God, they really love each other. So that when you get to that point where, T does what he does, it's just like crushing. And then you get the idea that Sly is not only fighting for, he's fighting for Apollo as much as it is a title, but that relationship built over the first 3 movies, like really, I think it's nice to see male love stories that are really about respect and connecting. And I think that there's a good version of that. And then there's the tribalism aspect to sports, which again, not to be like Debbie Downer, but there's a reason why every Super Bowl is the highest instance of like, domestic abuse against women, people getting drunk and my team's not winning and I'm pounding on the girl. And it's like, there's a lot of negatives as well. But when you celebrate the winning and the teammates and the coming together as a team. I think there's something really cool, and I think this movie, as much as I don't think they were trying to go for greatness, they tap into the best of team sports,
Yeah.
and that you are as strong as your weakest link.
I
And
think too part of the sweetness of this movie is the romantic,
yeah,
relationship
Mighty Ducks, totally.
involved,
Yeah,
which I think is, to your point, Tracy, is entirely borrowed from Rocky.
yeah,
Uh, like
Oh, for sure.
Sean
For sure.
William Scott got his Adrian
Yeah.
in
yeah.
character,
Also,
and
Friday Night
it's
Lights, I think.
resonant. It's
Yeah.
it's
Friday Night
really
Lights.
resonant.
I love Friday Night Lights
I
and the
feel like
TV.
Friday Night Lights did a good job of exploring these kids because a lot of even teen sports movies like McAllen, Texas, and stuff like that, like sport is the only way for them out of whatever bad situation they've come from. The fact that they're fast, or the fact that they can dribble a ball, or the fact that they can throw a ball further than other people, is
Right.
their saving grace, and the only way they're going to escape this sort of place that they've been from. And Friday Night Lights really takes a look at each of these kids and like the burden that football has become to each and every one of them and their families, which I feel like this film again does as well. Is that, yeah, Sean William Scott has really found his purpose, but then he blocks a puck with his face.
Face.
Yeah,
But there's also
Um,
something, because I think you're right, and I think I would also argue All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise also, which I always thought was kind of Friday Night Lights adjacent. Like I think they were
Mhm.
inspired by that, like small mill town football is a way out. But there's something interesting about that way out, and because we don't, there isn't a lot of access, and I think something even like Boys in the Hood, I think the way Singleton, I'll just never forget the first time I saw that in the theaters, and the guy who's going to make it out, the guy who's the football star, and when he's gunned down in that alley or the driveway, it's not just that you've blown him out, but the family's hopes and a generational attempt to escape, and it's all coded through sports as that. I think the military is often that as well for many
Yeah.
people. And so to have that in the background, but then have a comedy that's really funny. And I think there's also something about Scott's character again, who is aware that he's not the smartest bulb in the shed. That when he says that scene that you referenced earlier, Josh, where he's like, "Look, your son is gay, and I'm, not so smart," but he's like, "Look, I here's the first goal I ever scored, and it means everything to give to his parents." And they both leave, and they leave the puck on the table. And even the brother has to say, "Look, I'm proud of you, but I have to go with mom and dad." And it's like he's abandoned by his family. And through the course of this film, actually finds that surrogate family when he learns to play as a team. And I mean, again, this is not terms of endearment, but like they find these moments of surrogate family and chosen family. And I think
Very
that's
sweet.
why this film resonates in a way that some of the other more crass, just to be crude films perhaps do not, you know.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's give our final thoughts on this
Yes.
movie. I'm just gonna say out of the gate, this is my favorite sports comedy,
Favorite.
and that's a huge statement.
Yes, it
because
is.
of course, love Caddyshack and Slapshot and Miracle and The Rookie, and there's so many sports movies I love. Bad News Bears, the first one, not so much when they go to Japan, but the first one's very fun. I really love sports comedies. I don't know why. Don't love sports, love sports comedies. I'll watch Major League whenever. I'll watch Major League 3 Back to the Minors. I don't care. It's all good. But this one, and I think it's because of what Josh is saying. I think it's because of what it's doing to the toxic masculinity thing and like turning it on its ear, that it really hit me personally. And so I think this is, and it gets shitty movie status because nobody knew about it when it came out. But I would say this is like a hugely underrated gem, not just underrated, underseen gem. I think it's a great movie. Josh, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing that I love about this podcast is that you guys bring to light movies that people
Yeah.
should see again, whether it's to see it to hate it or to see it to find something that they never have. I remember just a quick story when I first showed Big Trouble in Little China to my roommate in Boston. He sat there watching the whole movie, and you do that thing when you're showing something you love to someone. Like every time a moment happens that you think is iconic, you look at them and wait for their reaction. He was just like he had just a look of confusion the whole movie, and we got to the end of the movie, and he was like, "I don't know what I just saw, and I don't even." And then I immediately hit play again, and we started watching it again.
Yeah.
And Kurt Russell started with like, "This is Jack Burton of the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening." And he just started laughing, and like immediately he got it. He got it. And
Yeah.
I think what Goon does is, the first time you watch it, you think, "Oh, this is a dumb sports movie," and wow, Sean William Scott's really dumb, and oh, it's really predictable, and oh, are they gonna win? I don't know. And then you see that it's a really in-depth examination of toxic masculinity and of sports and of the role of sports, not just for us, but for fans, but for everyone, for the players, for people. And it works on so many deep, deep levels. And I think the best shitty movies are the ones that on first viewing, you think, wow, that was a shitty movie.
Mm.
And then by the third viewing, you think, this is the best goddamn movie I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Goon, to me,
There's those ones that grow on you, and Goon is a great example. I mean, like comedy-wise, Office Space tanked when it came out.
Yeah.
And that's like infinitely rewatchable. I can watch Office Space whenever. I think this is a very common thing. I think it would, especially in the realm of comedy. Like sometimes it doesn't come out at just the right place where you're in the place for it, and then later you go, "Oh, how'd I miss that?"
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think sometimes you could just be having an off day, or
sure,
because I remember there was so much hubbub when this completely diametrically opposed film, but The Hours, which had like Oscar written all over it, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, Nicole Kidman by nose, as they say, right? Virginia Woolf, Meryl, Julianne, hated it. Saw it opening, hated it, could not get out of the theater fast enough. I was like, oh my God, yes, women suffer. Doesn't matter what year it is, get it. And then I got older and I revisited it and I went, oh, wow, this is really profound. We all have so many hours. How do we want to fill them? And it's not so much about Virginia Woolf and I can't bake a cake, so I check into a hotel room and whatever the hell Meryl was doing and waiting for Ed Harris to jump out the window because he was an SUV. But I was like, oh my God. And then when I was in a different place, I saw it. And that's why Kubrick famously, I think people watch his films over and over again because I actually don't think he is cold. I think that's an easy way out. I think there's a lot of emotionality, but it's challenging. I think it makes a lot of his films make you uncomfortable because depending on where you are in your life, you do see things differently. I still haven't got up to Barry Lyndon, but the rest of them I'm down with. But I do feel like this movie surprised me because I was like, okay, sports movie. If Josh likes it, I'll check it out. I was like, okay, this is lovely. And I think we could do a lot better to have a little bit more humanity in some of these male-driven films, whether they're comedy or dramas. And I think it does it really beautifully. And the fact that it was so ignored, I mean, I'm with you, Todd. I'm sure it just wasn't marketed right, or maybe it came out against the wrong weekend and there was some juggernaut out there. It's like,
or it just was, it's a Canadian movie, so they gave it like a minimal theatrical release, maybe. I mean, it certainly wasn't opened in every screen in America. It was an indie movie that just didn't do well on its initial release.
Hockey is not a very popular sport in the world. So
no, there's a reason why it's a Canadian movie set in Boston. Those are the two places that like hockey.
Yeah,
everywhere.
Exactly.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for bringing it. Very, very good film. I'm glad we talked about it.
Yes.
Excellent.
Amazing.
All right, so Todd, what do we do now? We're doing
all right, let's do our ending segments. There's 3. Right. It's exciting.
Oh my God, we have 3 now.
We start with our classic Be Bad or Be Best. Tracy and I will both present titles to you, Josh, and you
Yeah.
get to judge if it's so bad nobody should ever watch it, or it's so bad everybody needs to see it.
All right, I'm excited.
That's sort of the deal. Tracy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay.
All right.
So Be Bad, Be Best. We've mentioned this movie before, but I'm curious what you guys will think about this. I feel like this is something every guy I know of a certain age has seen, perhaps more than one. We are talking again about Major League.
Oh, the Major
Oh,
League. You know what this is? It's a comedy with bats and balls.
oh my God. You're so good. Charlie Sheen before the Tiger Blood era. What do we think? Be Bad, Be
Josh.
Look, I mean, it's from the same guys who did Naked Gun, right? And that whole thing. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it has its moments for sure. I don't think it's quite as deep on the satire and sort of making fun of what it's supposed to make fun of as something like Goon is.
Mhm.
But from just a pure sort of nostalgia standpoint, I'll say, yeah, let's watch it.
All right.
Or rewatch it, I guess.
That's a Be Best over there.
Be Best for you, Tim?
Oh yeah, it's totally a Be Best for me. But it's funny. I agree with Josh because on first viewing, the first time I saw this in the theater, and I was excited because it was
a great
on the poster. It says it's a comedy with bats and balls, so it didn't really have the balls I thought it would. But the cast is super game, and I'm a big. It's weird. I like Tom Berenger and Charlie Sheen shit from the 80s.
Yeah.
That probably does not paint me well as a person, but I did like those things, and it was good and dumb and light and fun. It was sort of it came around the same time as Bull Durham, which Bull Durham is like way more thoughtful, realistic, grounded movie. So Major League is sort of the antidote to that. We're going to do comedy that's completely stupid.
Yeah.
And Wesley Snipes.
That's true. I mean, I remember seeing this. I think in high school, and I was already working at the movie theater. So we had this for like months. And so I feel like the phrase "Joe Boo needs a refill" what became like something I still say. It's in my vernacular. And I just remember for months when he comes out to Wild Thing, like the entire theater would clap and cheer. I mean, it just worked emotionally in a theater. It just worked. And I remember
so fun.
It's such a bro movie, but again, there's a sweetness. Corbin Burnson writing his like, this is my hiatus from LA Law. Let's do this,
It's free The Dentist, So he has a lot to look forward to. Don't feel bad about Corbin Burnson.
I will say though, if you're looking for a sad, like to me, not to sort of side go this, but basketball to me. So I watched basketball.
Sure.
In a movie in a movie theater with a bunch of other people in West Virginia who were super, super bros and just wanted to see the South Park guys be disgusting and sexist and everything else. And for 80 minutes of the movie, they were embracing everything that they wanted. And then that end scene where Matt and Trey like tongue fuck each other for like a solid minute. And I watched every bro in the theater slowly recoil in horror. Like to me, that did more in 60 seconds than Major League did.
Well done.
You're right. It did. It did. That's not the kind of praise I'm heaping on this movie. Major League's just stupid and fun and light, and it's cotton candy. It's cinematic cotton candy.
Remember, there was it was around the time. Was it Scott Bakula did Unnecessary Roughness?
Yeah. And there was a bunch of sequels to that, and Major League, Unnecessary Roughness.
So
it had. What was the lady who was in that? Kathy Ireland.
Yeah.
You guys just got back from Ireland. I don't know why I said that. All right, here we go. Here's my Be Bad, Be Best. Yes. You ready?
I'm ready.
It's Goon, Last of the Enforcers. We already talked about it, but I already chose this. Josh, is it so bad nobody should watch it, or is it it's enough fun for people to look
I
at.
mean, if we've learned anything from tonight, it's that I cannot endorse Goon or Goon 2 enough. And you should immediately not just rent them, but buy them because you will want to watch them multiple times.
Get them on physical media, really, because there's going to be a huge fallout soon. And
It's
you're
true.
going to be glad you have physical media.
That is true.
Someone's going to have to run a crank on a generator
Oh,
while
Chris!
you're watching it, but.
Descent sequel is total shit.
You know what, Josh, I'm so glad that we're on the same page. It's not total shit, and I respect Crick's opinion, of course. But I watched the sequel after watching this just yesterday, and I thought this is as good as a sequel can be. This is a sequel that is taking into account, and maybe it's because it only blew up on Netflix, the original movie, but it really took into account what worked about the first one, and they just doubled down. Like the first act and much of the beginning of the second act is just dumb jokes. They're just leaning into dumb jokes. But then they get to the sweetness and they deliver that in the latter part. And it's not perfect. You know, there's some tonal shifts that maybe don't work. But if you're into Goon and the characters in Goon, if for no other reason, Goon 2 is great because it keeps Kim Coates working. And that's the main thing that we need to think about. Kim Coates.
Can I also say, just real quick, my diatribe on sequels, which I think works for all of these. I think the major problem with sequels, and also in some ways the major problem with Goon 2, is that in the first movie you invest so much in these characters that in the sequel you want to see these characters thrive and be themselves. Perfect example, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 introduces you to these characters that you love. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, you're like, oh, I'm going to see a whole movie where this family that spent one whole movie getting together, I'm going to see them in the sequel actually get to be a team and be together and do what was promised in the first one. And immediately, James Gunn blows up the team and sends them off in different directions, and you never get to see what was promised in the first one. I think the same thing with Goon. If Goon 2 had been a movie about Seann William Scott and the Highlanders thriving and maybe even going up to the next league and seeing the players do that and promising, sort of delivering on the promise of the first one, then it would have been way more successful. Instead, they immediately blow up the team, and Seann William Scott is immediately like quits hockey and goes to work in an office. And everyone who tuned into the first one to see Seann William Scott in ice skates beating the shit out of people are like, why am I watching 45 minutes of Seann William Scott in a tie in an office?
I mean, I think that makes what you're saying makes total sense. But the problem is when you start a movie with a winning team, where do you go? So Goon the Enforcer goes after thematic elements that involve retirement, involve getting too old. I'm 52. So those themes totally work on me. And so I think it's got pacing problems, absolutely, and various tonal shifts. But I think ultimately, as a sequel, you can't ask for a better sequel than this. Not like I know everybody's like Godfather Part 2. Yeah, okay. Let's just imagine that the Godfather Part 2 doesn't happen. And let's imagine that just movie sequels exist and they're never as good as the first one. And that's generally the case. This is as good a sequel as you can ask for. It delivers the jokes, it delivers the pathos, it will choke you up if you care about the characters. It works.
And Jay Baruchel directed the second one, which he did not. So
right.
Yeah, and Critics say fans were expecting Doug Glatt to be Bobby Probert, and no one will ever be. Okay, Critics, good point. As per usual. Actually, it's funny because I will say I don't really have an opinion. I'm going to say I be best because I've now loved Sean William Scott in this character, so that alone. But I will see it because I ran out of time to watch it before the show tonight. But it's interesting because as Josh was talking, I think that's true, and this is why he said she gets screenwriter. One of many reasons. I think people invest and they want a little bit more. And the trick of a great sequel is how do you say to formula, but do like a 10 to 15% thing where the DNA of what you liked is still there, but it's not the same thing, or it's just a retread. And I think the genius of obviously I can't get through an episode without rocking Aliens. The genius of Aliens is like, look, people like the Xenomorph and they liked Ripley. So Cameron's like, okay, I can't compete with Haunted House in Space because Ridley just closed the deal. You'll never be better. Maybe you'll be as good, maybe, but you'll never be better. So I better switch genre. And he was just young and arrogant enough to think he could. And so he's like, if that's Haunted House in Space, Aliens is a war film in space with the DNA of the Xenomorph and Ripley. This is St. George and the Dragon, people, in space. It's classic. It's everything. And then you throw a lot of female imagery in there. Oh, is the point man Vasquez? Oh, is the medic a woman? Is okay. Is the alien queen fighting for her kids? I think Ripley's fighting for her surrogate kid. And so then it's all loaded up. Or you could just be like Space Marines, knuckle dragging. Great. But to Josh's point, a lot of people didn't like Alien 3 because I think the conventional wisdom was, well, if the second one is Reagan era 1986 war film, Rambo Part 3, Rambolina, if you will, they liked that family. They're like, but Michael Bihn's super hot and she's got the blonde daughter and she's Ripley.
Exactly
So
right.
what does Fincher do in 1992, end of the era, end of the decade? In the opening credits, he kills off her love interest. He kills off the surrogate daughter. He casts literally Ripley out of the heavens as an alien herself, as the token woman on a male prison colony. And people didn't want that. They wanted more aliens. And what he did was a very contained, better bookend per the first film. But I understand people who can't get over, we killed Hicks and we killed Newt before the credits were over. I like it because for me, it's about Ripley's Apocalypse Now, 5 stages of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross over 3 acts of Ripley's grief. And then the ultimate, like, I'm going to end this shit until the 4th one comes in and we won't talk about that. But I think people wanted certain sequel stuff to happen. And so when you're really invested in characters, I think Crix was really invested in that. That's why you're coming from that point of view. But I also understand Todd's take on this because I've had that take on Alien 3, but I get my friends who hated Alien 3. So it's like, I like that there was a new auteur playing with the DNA, but I understand why people don't. So
what's your favorite sequel? I mean, we know Tracy's is clearly Aliens. What's your favorite sequel?
You mean sequel of all time?
All time?
Yeah.
Oh,
Of any franchise?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
that's a hard question.
That's super hard. Like if I'm gonna just knee-jerk a reaction, I'm gonna go Final Destination 2.
Wow.
Because that fucking freeway accident.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
You can't get better than that. But if I were given time, I'll
Sure.
send you a message tomorrow and tell you what it really is. But that's the first thing that springs into mind. Tracy, let's do our boosties.
Okay, boosties. My boost tonight, which I think, as Josh said, what I think is cool about the show for people who watch is that we do try to shine a light on films that secretly, even when we say it's a shitty movie, we never mean it. We really love and celebrate it. We can acknowledge there might be flaws, but that's basically it. And when I was watching this movie, it obviously reminded me of one of the best sports films ever, Slapshot. And I bring this up because George Ray Hill, who does great films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, made this movie. And it's funny because Paul Newman was famous for like never swearing and being a little bit straight and narrow. And in this movie, it's so purple, to say the least. He gave an interview afterwards where he's like, yeah, there's certain hangovers with certain characters. And I swear all the time, and Joanne's not a fan. And he talks about this, and the great Pauline Kael, when we used to have critics that mattered and could be tastemakers, and we were all reading one of 5 papers, and people were literate who were talking and not just like TikToking. Not that I have a bias, but Pauline Kael actually said when Slapshot came out, this is Newman's best character. Now, when you're talking about HUD and Cool Hand Luke and The Sting, and I would argue The Verdict and all these kinds of things, that's a big deal. But the fact that Newman, of a certain generation of Hollywood actor, leapt into this level of purple, and again, also working class, a mill town, this hard on our luck team, this is our only way out. So thematically kind of similar to Goon. But then you have the great Paul Newman there. And I just want to give props because there's a lot of conversation going back to the woke era in which we work. Oh, so-and-so can't write this, so-and-so shouldn't write this. Every dude I know who loves sports movies loves Slapshot.
Yeah.
And we should give a special shout out to the one of the most profane, sexy, whatever. It was written by Nancy Dowd. So a woman wrote Slapshot. So I don't want to hear women can't write certain things. If you're a great writer, like this guy here, Josh Rollins, you can write many things. And so I think it's one of those things where I love it. It's like when straight guys figure out that Chuck, who wrote Fight Club, is gay, and they're like, I'm like, I don't know what part of Tyler Durden in the bathtub. And we were raised by a generation of like another woman's the answer. I don't know what part you missed, but I kind of love it. And it's funny because people don't pay attention to credits. I'm like, yes, a woman wrote your beloved Slapshot. So I want to boost Nancy Dowd, who, oh, by the way, also worked with the great Waldorf Salt on a small film called Coming Home. So if you want to talk about writing range, somewhere between Coming Home and Slapshot, talk to
One
me.
of the stars of Coming Home slapped me in the face.
And that was when he was still a liberal when he was doing Coming Home. Look at you. You're at the back end of that situation. So anyway, Slapshot, if you haven't seen it, it's an older movie.
Great.
It's recently been reissued.
Love it.
There's a great 4K version. Look it up and watch it because like his eyes are gorgeous and you should see them clearly. So
It's such good R-rated comedy. Josh, do you like it?
I do. Yeah.
You don't have to. You can say it's shit. It's okay.
No, I love Slapshot, and I will say the reason I love Slapshot is just because of Paul Newman. I think a lot of the other elements that people love about it, I didn't like as much. I felt like, it was the first time he got to have he got to be, Paul Newman is charisma, to the nth degree. And we got to see that in all of his movies. But in this one, he got to sort of lay back into the sleaze and you loved him despite of him being a sleazebag. Actually, because he was a sleazebag. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is. It's so true.
Wasn't he a sleazebag in those noir movies like The Drowning Pool and whatnot?
Oh, but that was like Ross McDonald, or no, it was Harper, right? It was like that.
Harper and The Drowning Pool. Those are the two.
This was the first one where he wasn't squeaky. I mean, even HUD and those type of movies. I felt like he was still kind of the good boy, and in this one he got to be the sleaze.
It was the beginning. I think Josh is right. I love Paul Newman's later films because he was still relevant. I mean, right down to Road to Perdition, he was still doing interesting things. But for me, there's a double whammy that I think they're two perfect films. And I don't say that a lot, but I think if you look at The Verdict, is Frank Galvin. He should have won. I think that's one of the performances to end all performances. It's before David Mamet turned into whatever the hell he is now, but he adapted a book. It's a very Catholic film. It's very interesting that Mamet did it, but I think The Verdict is perfect. And then I think Absence of Malice, the great Sidney Pollack, when you have Newman with Sally Field and it really, and the great Wilfred Brimley at the end, but it's that thing where it's like, Absence of Malice talks about the role of journalists, and Sally Field plays a very young, hot gal who wants to get a byline, which women didn't have a lot back then. And, Newman may or may not be a made guy, may or may not be a mafia figure or adjacent. And he uses the press and thus Sally, who's he also in a relationship with because he's Paul Newman, guys, and she has to kind of figure it out. But the plotting on those two films, and I say this with a lot of the younger writers I work with, and when I teach at UCLA, both scripts, those are perfect things. And the fact that Newman did both coming off a Slapshot, it was like an entryway to him doing interesting, more adult kind of performances. And then I think you go all the way up to, I think Nobody's Fool is this beautiful film, which I think is like a grace note in his career, where even Bruce Willis gives a performance. Melanie's flawless, and the great Robert Benton directs. But I think those Newman films are just transcendent. And so start with Slapshot and then appreciate the range that man shows for the last 15 years of his career. It's excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. But don't watch Twilight. Skip it.
Yeah, because Shannon's dead to me.
Here's my boost. It's called Infested in American markets, and in French markets it's called Vermines.
Oh, Crix brings up a good point. Earlier in the show, we did reference Youngblood. But you are right, Crix. We're here for Pretty Reblo.
Yeah.
So
this is out. If you have the Shudder channel, this is available on it. It's called Infested on the Shudder channel. It's a French movie.
Oh.
It's about spiders overtaking a tenement building.
I live there. I live there.
So awful. It's so scary and disgusting. Did you ever see Arachnophobia?
I love Arachnophobia.
Okay. I love it too. And I think it's effectively creepy. This movie takes the comedy out of it and just makes you deal with spiders.
Kim hates spiders. She's like, yeah, no, I'm not watching that with you.
No, you should. If you hate spiders, you can't watch this. I hate spiders, but I did because I hate myself, I guess. But I watch it. It's so genuinely effective. They do a great job of marrying practical spiders, actual spiders, with CGI spiders in the best possible or worst possible ways. It really creeped me out. I can't recommend it.
I can't wait. It's on Shudder now.
Yeah, it's on Shudder right now. It just came out this past weekend.
Yeah, I saw a clip on Deadline. I think they did a clip of like when the guy's putting on his shoe and there's a spider in his shoe, and I was like, oh, I gotta go see this.
Oh yeah, and that's like right out of Arachnophobia. There's the spider and the slipper in that movie, and so when this happens in this movie, you're like, no. But you don't get off on jokes. There's jokes, in Arachnophobia. This one doesn't have jokes. It's just like the main character is kind of an asshole for bringing this spider into this tenement building, but you hang out with him the whole time, and you're sort of like, God, I don't know if I like this guy. But it's really good and creepy.
Hey, I love that you're boosting that. I will watch it by myself this weekend. I love a good spider movie. I also love, was it Ellery Alkahim's Eight-Legged Freaks?
Eight-Legged Freaks is one of my faves. Yeah. One of the reasons I brought this up is because there was a movie called Sting, and I don't want to like cast aspersions on things, but Sting, like I went to see it in the theater because it's a giant spider movie, and it took so long to get to the giant spider. I showed up to see a giant spider movie, and you're giving me elevated horror that eventually ends in a giant. This French movie just sets up spiders taking over a building, and then you are in there with the characters and you have to hassle with it.
I love that. Like, because we've done it on this show. One of my favorites is Shatner in Kingdom of the Spiders.
Oh yeah, it's great.
But the last act of that movie is basically Rio Lobo, like with spiders, and it's with William Shatner looking for the spy. And I'm like, I have such a weakness for that film. I love it.
Can I do a boost real quick, or is it?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so a movie that not a lot of people have seen, again, that I feel like people need to see, and I am not a big romantic comedy guy at all, but I think the best romantic comedy I've ever seen is a movie called About Time.
Yes.
It's with Domhnall Gleeson, Rachel McAdams, and it's essentially a guy who gets told by his father that on his whatever birthday that the men in the family can travel through time. And all the implications that come with that, and all the ups and all the downs. I will say it is one of the more poignant movies I've ever seen. It is one of the most effective love stories I've ever seen. And it is the only movie I've ever seen where the ending makes me cry like a baby every single time I see it. So cannot recommend it enough. about time.
It's beautiful. It's funny. We discovered we both had an affinity for this in Belfast. Rachel McAdams made 2 movies. I think they're about the same year. It was The Time Traveler's Wife and this one.
Mm.
And this is the great film. And I just feel like, God, I wish they had the marketing budget that the other one had.
Yeah.
Because I think she's another one who, again, I hate that Hollywood has become this. We don't know what to do with people like Rachel McAdams. It's like any year when you do the Notebook, like period romantic comedy, you do Wes Craven's Red Eye, you know, you're like, okay. And then you do Mean Girls. Like, if that's not range and you're cute as a button, like, there's no excuse for us to not have Sandra Bullock her into a bankable.
You mean they shouldn't have killed her within 5 minutes in the sequel to fucking Sherlock Holmes? Was that?
I'm okay if Mr. Ritchie wants to stop doing those films.
Yeah, Rachel, if you're watching this podcast, we have a role for you.
We do. We will have our people call your people.
Yes.
All right, real fast before we say goodnight. I'm going to see Fall Guy tomorrow night, says Jeff Luce.
Yeah,
no crying. Okay, Patty. Real
right,
fast. So we have this one more ending segment called the Indie Effect. And Tracy and I have both selected characters from any movie, a character from any movie that has no bearing on the narrative and did not need to be in the movie. This is not a negative thing.
Nope.
It's just like Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Nazis would have had their faces melted anyway if he was not there.
And the Ark would have been probably safer there than with our government based on who's now winning in our government.
All right. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go?
You go first. This is my.
Here's mine. This is Stephen Brill, who plays the barfly in Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Now, again, I tend to choose these characters according to the things that I love. I love him in this movie. I love the character in this movie. There's no reason for him to be in this movie. He has no effect on the narrative. He's just a drunk guy at the bar that Andy McDowell has to deal with when she's talking to her sister, played by Laura San Giacomo. And occasionally he says, they're not witticisms. They're just like stupid things. And it's funny.
Anyways, like, the poetry of bartenders.
Yeah. And at one point, Andy McDowell says to him, do you live here? And he says, no, just passing through. And that's why I love this character.
Okay, but doesn't he serve the purpose of when James Spader promises or basically makes this proposition to her?
Mm-hmm.
He's the flip side of the disgusting, annoying male. He's everything that the barfly isn't, and so she's much more likely to masturbate on film for him.
I see what you're saying. It's like it's a character juxtaposed against your romantic lead.
Yeah.
Even though they don't affect each other literally in the narrative, but metaphorically, it's a good comparison. That's a fair argument. Yeah. I mean, but as far as an indie effect, the actual narrative, he doesn't affect it. But you're right. You're right. Artistically, you are right. I apologize.
No, it's a valid point for sure.
This is why we need to have more screenwriters on the show.
I'm never going to be welcome back.
No,
I was just fucking around.
All right, well, this is going to be a controversial choice. But I was trying to get it because I have been away since we introduced the Indian.
Yeah, this is new. Yeah.
So I was trying. No, this is a beloved character. I love this character. I can probably do an imitation of her voice. I think she's fantastic. I like her in almost everything she's ever been in, and she's no longer with us. So there is no shade meant, but work with me here as good Gen X gents. I know you will back me up on this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a character, the great Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist.
Oh my God.
who comes in and basically tears their little trash home apart, and then is like, well, this shit happens, and she's like, this house is clean, and then it's fucking not clean.
Yeah.
25 minutes of the problem is still in Carol Ann's closet. We still have Jo Beth Williams luckily wearing underwear with a because PG-13 sort of, and then it's like, blah, 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 blah. Nothing Zelda does worked, and we have another act after Zelda goes away.
That's such a good one. I can't believe that hasn't happened before.
She's the snake oil salesman. I mean, that's the thing. Is it, and not only is like the reason he cast her, right, is she's weird enough,
right,
and strange enough.
Look how he's lighting her.
Clearly she knows what she's doing. Like right. If it was a 6 foot, 5'11" blonde woman, we'd be like, this bitch doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. But now that it's this weird, like, look, immediately you look at her and say, she's seen some shit and she can deal with it.
100%.
And the fact is, she doesn't. And that's the
no idea what's
is
up.
that she is a snake oil salesman.
Totally bogus. She was great, and I love her. There's no shade. I'm glad she's in the movie. But per the assignment, this character.
No, I totally agree with you. I had not thought of that before, and I think you're totally right. I'm sorry, Josh. We didn't ask you. Do you have one? Is there one that pops into your head? No.
I don't know. No. Sorry,
because you like made such a great argument for this one. I thought maybe you had one. You had one in your back pocket.
My God.
I mean, I feel like every character is necessary. I mean,
that's so sweet, but not taking into account any of the Rambo movies.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe Rambo in one of them.
I think sometimes zombies don't need names.
Maybe Rambo and everyone except for Rambo 1.
Oh my God. My problem with the last Rambo, where he's like, I've been in the jungle forever. I'm like, because you seem like you've been to Beverly Hills a little. Like, where's John Rambo?
Oh, no, that wasn't the last one. You're talking about the one with Julie
all
Benn.
of them since that one, he doesn't look like himself.
Oh, no, everything,
Pliskin wants to say hi.
Oh,
Hello.
Pliskin.
Plisker. Hi, Plisk. I know. Pliskin.
So what do we need to plug for you guys? Josh, what not just what you've got coming out, but tell people what they can look for you in. You're an actor.
Yeah, some of the fun movies.
Yeah,
and you're still an actor, right? You haven't stopped.
No, I don't act anymore. I mean, unless
you're done.
Sometimes I get pushed into it. So I like Infinite Storm. They had me. One of the actors missed his flight, and they were like, "You have to play this part." And so I just jumped in. And did it.
My God! I guess that's like in this entire show. I've been like, I'm trying to place your face, and I just watched that movie like 3 weeks ago before I knew you were going to be on the show. I enjoyed it. It was very good, but I guess that's what I recognized.
I did not enjoy it, so I'm glad that you did.
You didn't like it? It was too.
The director did some things.
There were some problematic things, for sure.
I'm guessing. I just, as a B movie, I was watching in my living room.
It's the only movie I've ever walked out of, and I wrote it, and I was at the premiere when I walked out. So that's to give you an idea.
I'm so sorry. It's not that bad, man. It's not that bad.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but no. I mean, the big thing really is Worldbreaker when it comes out next year. If people can throw the support behind that, I feel like it's really great. Great
shamelessly promoting it. I'm very proud of it because.
And it's supposed to come out when?
Probably next year. I mean, we did it independently, and we're going to be in post through December. But it's.
So you're hoping for a 2025.
Yeah. But what Josh has done, and I get to say this because it's true, and it's why I am so grateful he hung in there with us while we try to put this together in the changing landscape of our industry right now. The fact that we had to turn this into a independent film that's a foreign film is a commentary on where we are. But part of what I knew when I first met Josh, because I read a couple of his scripts, and this is the one that I just kind of fell in love with, was like, there is a definite Gen X. He saw all the right films, learned all the right lessons, and he's written a character-driven, the future is female, not so subtle subtext. So of course I was like, meh. But I care about this family, and what I love about Brad, and we should give a shout out to Brad Anderson, our director. If you haven't seen
Yes.
Session 9, do the thing. The Machinist, do the thing.
Oh, I saw Session 9 when it came out.
It's fabulous. Brad has lifted up because of, I think, primarily our locations in Belfast and the Northern Irish coast and stuff. We have a scope to this little independent film that I hope will delight audiences. But what I love about what Ang Lee does a lot, I think Brokeback Mountain does this. I think Sense and Sensibility. I think The Ice Storm. There's a real intimate name, but there's like an epic sensibility to it. And I think Anderson's done that because of what Josh wrote. And so I'm really hopeful that our creature work will continue to be as strong as what we already have in the can. But it really is about character. So anybody who's a writer and who's out there watching, like, just keep working on your characters, because at the end of the day, it is so hard to get anything made. And for myself, I fell in love with the people that Josh created. And so if we do it right, hopefully you guys will too. So I just want to give major props to the writer, because I feel like this industry does not do that enough. And we're in the thick of post, but we'll be talking to you guys as we get closer to the final film.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, if you're a filmmaker, independent filmmaker, and you've come to the point where you feel like you've stretched your budget as much as you can, these things that Tracy has said are important, character development, all that stuff, and it doesn't feel like it's working, I recommend gratuitous nudity and horrible violence. If you do those things, if it's not working, just add that and you'll be fine.
I do have a quick story about that. I used to be hired as a ghostwriter all the time to come in and fix scripts that were horrible. And in one of the scripts that I was given, they give you all the previous versions of the script. And so this one was a sci-fi film, and the lead female was a captain of a starship. And they said, if we want the notes from the studio on the first draft were really strong character work, but if we want someone like Sandra or Charlize, you really need to flesh out the lead female. And so I got the second draft, and everything was the same, only she showed her tits. And so the writer had read flesh out and literally fleshed out. Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Tissed up, everybody. Amazing. Josh, I love seeing you virtually.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're back, Tracy.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you.
Gosh, you're amazing. I'm so happy to have met you. I'm so glad you wrote the movie that Tracy is producing. I cannot wait to see this shit.
I know. It's going to be good.
I'm very excited.
Good.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Good night, all.